Okay, so this is really our first lesson in this book. Everything else we've been doing has been reviewed till this point. So our main idea today, we're going to be using powers and exponents. Have you heard those words before? Powers, exponents? Okay, good. So the first word is, our first vocabulary word is a factor. Does anybody remember what a factor is? So like, for instance, what are the factors of 6?
6, 12. Yeah, right. Is that right?
Okay. No. Those would be the multiples. So 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, those would be the multiples of 6.
Is it like what it can be like multiplied by, like 2?
Two numbers that multiply to give you that number. So the factors of 6 would be 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Right? Because remember, when we're finding the greatest common factor, we're looking for the number that can be divided into those numbers. So factor are things that multiply to give us that number, is a factor. Two numbers multiplied together to form a product are called factors. You text one of your friends, that friend then texts 2 friends after 1 minute, and the pattern continues. So you see here, after 0 minutes, 1 text was sent. After 1 minute, 2 texts were sent. And then those 2 people texted 2 people to give us 4. After 3 minutes, those 2 people texted 2 that texted 2 more to give us 8. So how many text messages will be sent at 4 minutes if this pattern continues?
10.
Okay, where'd you come up with 10?
Because 3, it's saying 3, there's 3 text messages and there's 3 text messages in 3 minutes, so.
Nope. That's not what it's saying. It's saying after 1 minute, there were 2 text messages sent. At 2 minute mark, 4 text messages were sent. At the 3 minute mark, 8 text messages were sent. So at the 4th minute, what's going to be multiplied? 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which should give us 16. What's happening? What happens when you multiply a number by 2? It doubles. 1 times 2, 2 times 2, 4 times 2, 8 times 2, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512. Right? Doubling a number, those you should know a few of those in your head. Right? Those are pretty easy. So after 4 minutes, so at the 4 minute mark, there should be 16 total text messages sent. So what is the relationship between the number of 2's and the number of minutes? So at 1 minute, how many 2's were multiplied? 1. At 2 minutes, how many 2's were multiplied?
2.
At 3. At 4. You follow? So after 10 minutes, I would be multiplying 2 10 times. Okay? Well, there's another way we can write that. Instead of writing it out, 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, all the way out to the 10th minute, we can write it as a power. And that's what we're going to look at next. Okay, 2 or more numbers that are multiplied together to form a product are called factors. We just talked about that earlier. We multiply 2 things together to get a number. It's called a factor. When the same factor is used, you may use an exponent to simplify the notation. The exponent tells us how many times the base is used as a factor. The common factor is called the base. So here's the way we write exponents. The number 16 which we said was the answer to the last question, could be represented as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which means we're multiplying the number 2 4 times. So that 2 is the base. It's the number that's being multiplied over and over and over. The exponent is 4. That's how many times we multiplied the base by itself. And you said you've seen that stuff before, right? That's not new. Okay? This whole thing, so the 2 is the base, the 4 is the exponent. All of it together, 2 to the 4th power, we call that a power. All of that written as once is called a power. Numbers expressed using exponents are called powers. So right here are some different powers. So how would we say this? 5 with a little 2 for an exponent. I don't want you to say 5, 2. How do we read that? That is 5 to the power of 2. That's fine. 5 to the second power is a way you could say that. Or anytime we raise something to the second power, we can call that squared. Okay, that's the short term for it. Anytime you raise something to a second power, we can call it squared. And we'll talk more about why that is when we start talking about area and volume. Okay, right here, this would be 4 to the third power. Anytime we raise something to the third power, we call that cubed. So to the second power is squared, to the third power is cubed. And then this last one, 2 to the 4th power, we don't have any shorthand for that. We just call that 2 to the 4th power. It doesn't have any fancy abbreviation. The only ones that do are to the second power and the third power, and those are called squared for second power and cubed for third power. So first, we want to write 7 to the 5th power as a product. Well, what does a product mean? Do y'all know what product is?
The answer of
Answer to what kind? Okay, product is an answer, but it tells us it's the answer to a multiplication problem. Sum is the answer to an addition problem. You heard these words? Sum, product. What about the answer to division? Does anybody know what that's called? Starts with a Q.
the equality.
Answer to division problem?
Quantity.
I think I heard it. No, not question. That was close though.
Quantity.
No, y'all must not know it. The quotient. Quotient. That's the answer to a division problem is the quotient. Answer to a multiplication is a product. Answer to addition is sum. Answer to a subtraction problem. Difference. Yep. That's correct. So, after that quick little review, we're going to write each power as a product. So we're looking at the answer to a multiplication problem. So we just want to write it as the things being multiplied together. So 7 to the 5th power, how could I write that? Well, that means I'm multiplying the number 7 5 times. The exponent tells how many times we're multiplying. So that would be 7 times 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. And for right now, that is my answer. I don't care what the actual number comes to be. I just want to write it as a multiplication problem. So 7 to the 5th is 7 times 7 times 7 times 7 times 7. Any questions there? Okay, what about 5 to the 2nd? What's my base? What's the number being multiplied over and over? 5. And how many times are we going to multiply it? Just 2 times here because it's being squared or raised to the second power. Okay, so the answer to 2 there would just be 5 times 5. Six times 6 times 6 times 6. That's correct. Okay, B. Pick a number 1 through 6.
That would be 5.
Okay, how do we write B?
1 times 1 times 1.
1 times 1 times 1. Easy enough? Pick a number, 1 through 6.
It's 5.
Pick a number, 1 through 6.
The answer is 4.
Pick a number, 1 through 3.
The answer is 3.
2 to the 5th, how do we write it?
2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. I usually guess.
That is correct. Any questions on any of these three? We can evaluate. Well, evaluate just means find the value of. So you're going to simplify it, essentially. Powers, by multiplying the factors. Numbers that are written without exponents are in standard form. So there's a couple of new vocabulary words for you. Evaluate just means to find the value of. And when we write something in standard form, that means there are no exponents. So if it tells me to evaluate, that means we want it written in standard form with no exponents. Okay, so it tells me to evaluate the expressions. So I'm going to actually perform the multiplication until there are no more exponents. So 3 is 2 to the 5th power. So we could write that as 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So we are just doubling 5 times. So we start with the number 2. 2 times 2 is 4 times 2. 8. 8 times 2. 16. 16 times 2 is 32. So 2 to the 5th power is just 32. Now look here. The next one is 8 to the 3rd power. So that means I can write that as 8 times 8 times 8. So this one could be a little bit trickier, but the first one should be easy. 8 times 8, we need to know that. 64. So now then I've got 64 times 8. Okay, so we can write that out. 64 times 8. 8 times 4 is 32. Carry a 3. 8 times 6 plus 3. 51. So 8 to the 3rd power evaluates to be 512. Okay, next one, E. Pick a number, 1 through 6.
The answer is 2.
Pick a number, 1 through 2.
It's 1.
Okay, 7 to the 3rd.
Alright, I did 7 times 7, you got 49, and 49 times 7, you got 343.
Yeah.
Okay, so 7 times 9 is 3. Carry a 6. 7 times 4 is 28. 28 plus 6 is 34. 343. Very good. Any questions there? Pick a number, 1 through 6.
It's 4.
Okay, what did we get on F? 4th row. It's you, McCain. Okay, how'd you get 7? Okay, what's 1 times 1? Times 1. Times 1. Times 1. Times 1. Times 1. So what's the answer? What's 1 times 1? Times 1? 1 times 1 is 3? 1 times 1 is 1. Times 1, 1. Times 1. Times 1. Times 1. Times 1. So the answer is? 1. So 1 to any power is going to give us 1, right? 1 to the millionth power is 1. Okay. Okay, so numbers that are written with exponents, that's called exponential form. So we just talked about standard form has no exponents. Exponential form, that means my answer is going to have an exponent in it. So when I look at the question, it tells me to write 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 in exponential form. That means my answer is going to have an exponent. So when I multiply this, what number is being multiplied over and over?
3.
It's 3. So I make 3 my base of the power. And then the exponent is how many times was 3 being multiplied? 4 times, so that is the exponent. So I can rewrite 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 as 3 to the 4th power. And that's my final answer in exponential form. Because it's the thing being multiplied over and over. And you get to the 4th power because it's being multiplied 4 times. Excellent. Pick a number, 1 through 6.
The answer is 3.
Pick a number, 1 through 2.
It's 1.
How do we say it though? Remember our wording? I told you, let's don't say 12, 6. Twelve to the 6th power. Okay? 12 to the 6th power. That's how we say that. Like here was 10 to the 4th power and 12 to the 6th power.